Hi there, welcome back to St. Thomas Aquinas for everyone. I'm Dave Palmer, and as you can tell, things are changing here in my home studio for these podcasts, and very excited to introduce you to a few new things that I have as we get close to Christmas. I was able to buy a few things to improve the look of the studio as we continue to journey through the Summa. I'm going to get to my lesson in just a second, but I want to let you first of all know that we have a new microphone and a new camera, and if I look down a bit during this video, forgive me because the camera is kind of high, but I also have a picture in the background which you may recognize. It's Michelangelo's The Creation of Adam, and I was trying to decide what background picture would best epitomize the Summa and what it's all about. And there probably could be others, but this one really impressed me because, and I could do a whole video on this, it's the creation of Adam, and it's God touching man, it's God breathing life into man. And if you notice also, God has his arm around Eve. Okay, so Eve is there in heaven with him. Also notice all the angels that are with him as well. And God is creating Adam. And as I have said many times, the Summa is about God creating man and then drawing man back to himself. And so after God creates Adam, of course, we have the fall. And then God does everything in his power in order to bring not only Adam and Eve and their children, but everybody else that ever lived back to him. And that's going to be the main kind of topic that we talk about in this video, is the passion and death of Jesus, looking at it in four different ways. Why Jesus died, what did it have to do with us, how did we benefit from it, how did Jesus benefit from it. So let's get straight to it. And again, there's so much I could say about this picture behind me, and I think it's interesting just the look in the Father's eyes and how badly he wants to create man, and how excited he is. In fact, he looks a lot more determined than Adam is. Adam kind of has the limp finger, and God's reaching out to him. It's really beautiful. And so there's so much there. And of course, Adam is naked, and the beauty of the naked body. This is not pornography. This is beautiful. And that's why even John Paul II was asked to cover the naked bodies in the Sistine Chapel, and he said, no, of course not, I'm not going to do that. So let me bring my picture down here a bit and see if I can get this into a place where it's not going to be in the way of the other slides that I show. And let's get right to it and talk about the passion, death, and ultimately the resurrection of Jesus as well. So there's four different aspects that we're going to be looking at in regard to Jesus's death and passion. And the first one is merit. Okay, and so when you think of merit, certain things may come to mind. You merit by the kid in the neighborhood mows your yard and you give him $20. Okay, he's merited that. He's done something to earn the $20, right? And this is a very important topic in Christianity, because some people accuse Catholics of being, works righteousness, and we'll get to that. There's a whole section, and in fact, that we've already covered, that has to do with grace and merit, and you might go back and watch that video because it's really interesting, talking about divine ordination. And also, of course, if you're ever a Boy Scout, a Cub Scout, the merit badges, and then there's merit pay, and so you get the point. You do something in order to get something in return. And Thomas here says, grace was bestowed upon Christ not only as an individual, but inasmuch as he is the head of the church, so that it might overflow into his members, and therefore Christ's works are referred to himself and to his members in the same way as the works of any other man in a state of grace are referred to himself. But it is evident that whosoever suffers for justice' sake, provided that he is in a state of grace, merits his salvation thereby, according to Matthew 5:10. Blessed are they who suffer persecution for justice' sake. Again, this is the debate, the question that often comes up between Catholics and Protestants, is that, is there anything that we can do towards our justification, towards our salvation? Thomas says yes. Of course, without God's grace, He initiates it. It's his initial move. But in divine ordination, as we've talked about, God allows us to cooperate and participate in our redemption, in our, justification, our salvation ultimately, not only for himself, but likewise all his members. So Jesus merited by dying on the cross. All right, was whether Christ's passion brought about our salvation by way of atonement. Now, when you think of atonement, you think of having to make up for an error that was done. Okay, so examples of this would be you crash into somebody's car and, you're sorry and they forgive you, but you still got to pay for it, right? You still have to pay for the car. Or maybe you got a messy room and the kid says, "Mom, I'm sorry, I messed up my room." And the mom says, "I forgive you, but you still got to clean it up." Okay, you still have to make atonement for what you did. So Thomas here is saying, and let me get this a little bit more out of the way so we can read the whole thing. This is what happens when you change everything up. You got, okay. He properly atones for an offense who offers something which the offended one loves equally or even more than he detested the offense, but by suffering out of love and obedience, Christ gave more to God than was required to compensate for the offense of the whole human race. First of all, because of the exceeding charity from which he suffered. Secondly, on account of the dignity of his life, which he laid down in atonement, for it was the life of one who was God and man. Thirdly, on account of the extent of the passion and the greatness of the grief endured, and therefore Christ's passion was not only a sufficient but a superabundant atonement for the sins of the human race, according to 1 John 2. He is the propitiation for our sins, and not for ours only, but also for those of the whole world. So unlike the messy room or the car, when we do a mistake, we have to atone for it. Jesus didn't make the mistake. It was Adam and Eve and all of us who sin, and Jesus steps in, and he makes atonement for our sins. Okay, so that's pretty cool. All right, so we'll move on now. Now we're talking about sacrifice. Was what happened on the cross a sacrifice? And I know you know it is, but let's see. There's Jesus on the cross, and of course we had the Old Testament image of sacrifice. But in the Old Testament, it wasn't a person typically that was sacrificed. It was a lamb or a cow or a bullock. Okay, some kind of animal had to be sacrificed. And of course, we see this in our own life where we can participate in Jesus' ultimate sacrifice for us. We can sacrifice for our kids. We can lay down our lives for our fellow man. And so sacrifice, of course, the martyrs were key in sacrificing as well. Thomas says a sacrifice properly so called is something done for that honor which is properly due to God in order to appease him, and hence it is that Augustine says a true sacrifice is every good work done in order that we may cling to God in holy fellowship, yet referred to that consummation of happiness wherein he can be truly blessed. But as is added in the same place, Christ offered himself up for us in the Passion, and this voluntary enduring of the Passion was most acceptable to God as coming from charity. Therefore, it is manifest that Christ's passion was a true sacrifice. If you remember when we talked about the virtues, the ultimate sign of love for a human being is martyrdom. Okay, that's the greatest act of charity because we're putting ourselves on the line for somebody else. We're laying down our life for our fellow man. Well, that's exactly what Jesus did. He did it by way of sacrifice, right? Moreover, as Augustine says further on in the same book, the primitive sacrifices of the Holy Fathers were many and various signs of this true sacrifice, one being prefigured by many in the same way as a single concept of thought is expressed in many words in order to commend it without tediousness. All right, so now we've gone over atonement, we've gone over sacrifice, and then we also went over the first one, which was merit. And so the final one is redemption. How is this different? We hear all these words, we were redeemed by Christ, Christ sacrificed, atonement, merit. What does all this mean? Well, that's what Thomas is explaining in this part. Again, we're in Tertia Pars, the third part of the Summa, question 48, article 4 in this case. All right? So this is Christ on the cross. And when you think of redeemed, typically you think of being set free. Okay, you're free from bondage. If you remember that famous movie, Shawshank Redemption, it was all about guys in prison, right? And being redeemed, being set free, being justified, being let go, right? And so that's what redemption is about. And so how does that have to do with Christ? And how does that have to do with us? Thomas says, man was held captive on account of sin in two ways. First of all, by the bondage of sin, because whosoever committeth sin is a servant of sin. Okay, by our own personal sins, we are slaves to sin. And by whom a man is overcome, of the same also is he a slave. Since then, the devil had overcome man by inducing him to sin. A man was subject to the devil's bondage. We all feel it. We feel the strain of concupiscence. We feel the strain of original sin. I don't think there's anybody that can honestly say they don't feel to some degree in bondage, that, like St. Paul said, why do I do that which I don't want to do? The things that I want to do, I don't do, right? Secondly, as to the debt of punishment, to the payment of which man was held fast by God's justice, and this too is a kind of bondage, since it savors of bondage for man to suffer what he does not wish, just as is the free man's condition to apply himself to what he wills. Okay, so we are in bondage to a certain degree. Since then, Christ's passion was a sufficient and a superabundant atonement for the sin and the debt of the human race. It was as a price at the cost of which we were freed from both obligations. For the atonement by which one satisfies for self or another is called the price by which he ransoms himself or someone else from sin and its penalty. Now, Christ made satisfaction not by giving money or anything of that sort, but by bestowing what was the greatest price, himself for us, and therefore Christ's passion is called our redemption. Okay, so anytime you see a crucifix, you really should reflect on these words: the merit, the atonement, the sacrifice, and the redemption, all of them as explained in the Summa Theologia. And so, anyways, that brings us to an end of this video. I'm going to go ahead and bring my picture up here a little bit so that I can close out as I started. And I thank you very much for watching these. Now that I got a little bit better equipment, we'll be snazzing up the videos a little bit and maybe bringing some new tricks in. But anyways, I hope you like the image behind me. Again, I could talk a lot more about this and how significant it is in the Summa. Michelangelo lived a few centuries after Thomas, and I got to think that Michelangelo was greatly influenced, as was every Catholic Christian who lived after St. Thomas Aquinas. So that's going to do it. Thank you for watching and commenting and liking, and we are going to try to finish the Summa before the end of the year. So if you are not caught up, go back, watch the rest of them, and if you watch them all, you have studied the entire Summa Theologia in 1 year. God bless you. Thank you for watching.